Well, hello. Welcome to Truth Proof live stream. Another week, another Thursday night on a summer's evening here in the UK. So we've got to welcome everybody from the UK and around the world to this week's live stream. And Paul, we did say at the end of last week's live stream there was going to be no live stream this week, didn't we? But we kind of got mixed up on our dates.
We did. You blame me for that, Les. It's just how things are. We've just been a bit hectic, but we're here. And I hope people enjoy our guest tonight, Ella LeBain, because I think she's going to be really, really interesting. Different to some other researchers and people that we've had on the show, but
definitely.
Once again, great. Been busy. Been up on cliff tops regularly this week till after midnight. So I'm a bit tired today, a bit of a sore throat.
Right.
Loads of excuses, but we're gonna do what we do. And I can see a lot of people in chat here. Diane Farrell, G Dog, Fortian, Disabled Welshman, Karen Taylor. Disabled Welshman's got a lot to say for himself. I nearly repeated him 3 times there. And there he is again, Stargazer Eternal, Steve Stees. We've got Sky doing moderating for us. Thank you very much. Revenant's in. Definitely. Good to see you, mate. And Simon, Martin McClinchley, Tom Waters. Loads of familiar faces, and let's hope we get some new ones as well. Andy Pollard, all good. And there's bound to be loads of names there that I've not covered, but I've only got a little strip there that I'm looking at.
Yeah, that's fine. And just going to remind everybody, we would really appreciate if you could share this stream at some point, whether during the show or after the show or whenever. And it just helps us get Truth Proof out there into the viewers' minds. So, without further ado then, Paul, I'm ready to take questions from Sky. Later on, I'll be back on in about 45 minutes or so. Hopefully we'll get some questions. And don't forget, folks, if you got any questions, please put them in caps so Sky can just put them in the right folder for us. All right, then. I'll let you get on with the show, Paul. And let's bring in.
Hi, Ella. That's good to see you.
Hi, Paul. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. So a little bit of an introduction. Ella LeBain, biblical scholar, UFO researcher, author, member both of MUFON Colorado and MUFON National, and as well as the author of a few books, notably Who's Who in the Cosmic Zoo. I'm sure you're going to tell us a little bit about that in next hour or so. So, Ella, welcome to Truth Proof.
Thank you, Paul. It's good to see you.
So, to jump into this a little bit, we'll just go nice and easy. Tell us a little bit about how you got involved in the subject of unexplained phenomena, the spiritual side of it. A little bit of a background on Ella.
Well, I've been an experiencer since the age of 2. And I had a lot of, I kind of had a rough childhood. My mother died when I was 6 years old. And I was an only child, and I got shuffled around a lot. And the aliens kind of got me. I mean, I was abducted since I was 2, and I was trying to figure it out, what was going on, why I would wake up with sleep paralysis and bloody noses, which is something that my parents would tell me about. So it was a memory that I didn't have to access through hypnosis or anything like that. It was talked about in the family. They used to find me upside down in my bed in my crib with bloody noses and bloody sheets. And they used to talk about how they used to have to change the sheets all the time. So, I was always curious what was going on. So that was the first thing.
What's your earliest memory then, your memory then, Ella, that you can sort of relate to?
I do remember that whole episode when I was 2. And I think that, I've read psychologically, we don't really have memory until we're 2. Like before 2, it's kind of a blur. So those were my earliest memories. Then my mother was sick in the hospital for like a year and a half before she died of bone marrow cancer. And I was age 6. So I remember before that other memories of, feeling like something was sticking in my neck. And I had these little BB things, and I would try to ask her tell her about it. And I know that she couldn't really understand or help me with what was going on. And of course, after all these years, I totally don't blame her, because I think that she was also abducted as well. And I have learned that it's something that goes, it's familiar, it's in the family, it's generational, it's bloodline stuff. So, and my father came from an Orthodox Jewish family, and he was a sergeant in the Battle of the Bulge in World War II. And so there was a lot of early, like he used to watch Hogan's Heroes all the time. There was just a lot of stuff in my early childhood that had to do with that. And anti-Semitism, because I'm sort of a hybrid. I come from a mixed family, and there was a lot of racism and anti-Semitism while I was growing up. So, and then I ended up in this step family. So I'm kind of like a real life Cinderella in a way. And so my whole story, my personal story and everything that's happened is in a future book called Cinderella's Shadow, which I haven't published yet. But by the time I went to Israel, they sent me to Israel to get an education. And I came back with Yeshua.
Okay.
So, in this life, it's not always what you know, it's who you know that really matters. And so because I was such kind of a lost soul, I believe he reached out to me and wanted to save me and pull me in. But, raised with the religions, I was very confused. And when I was 13, both families were fighting over me, how they were going to raise me. Okay, if I'm going to be this, am I going to go?
We've got opposing religions.
Religions, right?
And you've got this. I'm reluctant to say extraterrestrial element going off as well, because I personally prefer not to say extraterrestrial because I don't know where they're from. But you've got this beings of unknown origin also interacting with you.
Yes. So
which parts of the family knew?
Well, they, I shared everything after, when I was in my 20s, not in my teens, but in my teens, I was still confused. I didn't know what was going on. So I said, well, when I grow up, I'm going to marry a Protestant, because in my 13-year-old brain, I thought that was in between being Jewish and Catholic, because I didn't want to be Catholic, and I was not really interested because it was too much. Being Jewish, I almost felt like ashamed, because of all the anti-Semitism, and I just wanted to be loved and accepted. And I was like, okay. And you know what? I did. Yeah. So be careful what you wish for, because I married a Brit from the Church of England, which is Protestant, just like you were raised in that. So, we've been together 32 years, and he too has had experiences. So, we're bonded on that level. And I just went down a lot of rabbit holes to figure all this stuff out. And in 1995, I had multiple experiences. That was the year I woke up. I saw a football-sized, disc-shaped silver ship emerge out of the Gulf of Mexico after sunset at night. Okay. And that was just like total, like jaw-dropping paradigm shift. I was like, oh my God, what the heck is going on here? And that night I found out later from a friend of mine who was part of MUFON in Florida, that MUFON had received 350 calls reporting that.
Okay.
I was not alone. So then I was invited to this conference, this one-of-a-kind conference in Washington, D.C., called When Cosmic Cultures Meet. And at that time, because I was going down all these rabbit holes and trying to figure out what was going on, what was not only happening to me, but why were ships coming out? I mean, what was going on? So I met Zecharia Sitchin, and I met John Mack, and a number of other people that were there. But I connected with those two, like they were memorable and influential in my journey. So at the time, I thought I wanted to be a reporter. So I was collecting interviews. So I asked to interview him and Zecharia Sitchin, and he was so kind and I sat down with him and his wife, and we connected. We had a lot in common, obviously Israel and the Hebrew language. And
so Ella, just before
started.
you get into Zecharia a little
Mm-hmm.
bit,
Mm-hmm.
just in case some of our audience have not got a lot of knowledge of this man, you just give us a little background on Zecharia Sitchin.
Sure. Yes. Well, he is an archaeoastronomer and a linguist as well. He was fluent in 5 languages, and he was born in what used to be Palestine. It's now Israel. He knew Russian and English, and so basically he had access to the ancient cuneiform Sumerian tablets that are situated. They reside in the London Museum, so people can still go and look at them. But he was able to translate most of them. Okay, so he actually started that. He was like the first one to really tackle that. Okay, and the way I see research is like a baton race. Okay, like somebody starts it and they run around the field and then they pass it on to someone else and then you run with it. So there's no perfection. There is just improvement, each time someone comes along. So he pioneered this field of uncovering what was in these ancient Sumerian tablets, and he translated them into 12 books. Okay, called the Earth Chronicles. And he wrote a book called The 12th Planet, which was the first book that I read of his. And it was basically about an ancient system that interacts with our solar system approximately every 3,567 years. Okay, and each time it comes around, it creates earth changes, cataclysms, pole shifts, and cultural changes as well. So, and so I was very intrigued by that because my background is in science, astronomy, biology, social sciences. So I just was glommed on to his research. And then one thing led to another, and I moved to Colorado, and then he came here 3 times to do lectures locally. And so, I kind of forged a relationship with him, and I was part of his International Bible Study group. So he was very influential in my work and as a researcher. However, so I will say that some stuff that he had said or concluded, people took and misunderstood and twisted. So I felt like it was my responsibility, now holding of the baton in that regard, to kind of put those things straight. And that's what I've done in my book series. So Who's Who in the Cosmic Zoo, Book 1, 4th edition is coming out in August. So I'm finally getting that under my own imprint. So it was published by other people, and I'm finally now owning it. But I went on my own and I did book 2, Who is God, book 3, Who are the Angels, book 4, Covenants, and book 5, The Heavens. So he's featured in my 5th book, The Heavens. I have 2 chapters all about my interview, when cosmic cultures meet, and what was going on in the 90s with him. And it's a whole backstory between him and the NASA, the old NASA chief astronomer, Robert S. Harrington. And so when I met Sitchin in 1995, this was after he did this, after he had this interaction with Harrington. And Harrington was 50 years old, perfectly healthy. And you can look it up on YouTube. To see the interview between the 2 of them. And then within, not even a year, less than a year, he comes down with some rare form of esophageal cancer and dies at age 50. Okay. Well, this shook up Sitchin a lot. And he was told, he was threatened never in his lectures to tell people when, okay, Nibiru, which is this ancient system, and I can tell you more about it. It's not just one planet, it's a whole system. It's a binary system, which I call the Nemesis Nibiru system, which our sun it's our sun's binary twin. It's a brown dwarf star that is dead. It doesn't radiate its own light anymore. But just like when our sun shines on other planets in our solar system, it makes it look like a big, like Venus, it shines. So when Nemesis comes around the sun, our sun illuminates it and it looks like two suns, which is what people have been seeing for the past 10, 15 years. So anyway, he was told never to tell anyone in his lectures when Nibiru was going to pass the Earth. Okay, so because that was the number one question that everyone had. When is this coming back? When are we going to see this again? And he was always very tight-lipped about it. Okay, so I need to make that point and he would say, it's not going to happen in my lifetime. And he was right, because he died in January of 2010, and it didn't happen in his lifetime.
And he deciphered the text, and he obviously knew when this second sun was going to come round. When it was going to appear then.
Yes, and it's not just the second sun; it's a system. So system. It's 7 planets that orbit this brown dwarf star, and one of them is this rebellious, it's out of whack planet that is like 5 to 6 times the size of Jupiter, that creates all these plasmic exchanges and magnetic pulls on all the planets in our solar system, as well as the sun. And this is what we're seeing right now with our sun. Our sun is perturbed. Our sun is going through a unusual, unprecedented sunspot cycle, where the sunspots are growing like 5-6 times the size of Jupiter. I mean, they're huge. And then the sun is spewing out all these solar flares and coronal mass ejections that are waving over all of the planets, including us. And what's recently happened is that our magnetosphere has cracked. Okay. In fact, last year there were 3 cracks that were recorded and published and everything. So now, our magnetosphere is our protective bubble. So now when we get solar flares and coronal mass ejections, it's seeping through, which is creating the warming, the weirdness, the wobbling, and pole shifts. So our magnetic North Pole has already shifted 40 degrees. It's gone from the Canadian Arctic to now Siberia. Okay. And we're seeing the volcanic eruptions that are happening all around sleeping volcanoes that we haven't heard from in decades and centuries are now waking up. What happened in Iceland last week, and it's still spewing. It lost its cone, it lost its wall, and we're seeing earth changes. And I'm sure everybody's heard of the climate change. And so what we have is a confluence of different things happening, and that includes technology. Okay, so when people look up, they're seeing it's not just the sun; it's like our technology that
was going to be a question, actually. How much is?
Sure.
No, you're at it. But how much was our technology, our influence having on the climate change? Because that's all we hear about, and you're giving us this other angle now as well, which is interesting. Which is the greatest influence that's having the effect on Earth? Do you think? I know you can't say.
I mean, I believe that it's the Nemesis Nibiru system that is causing all this, but we have intervened. We, meaning us Earth humans, America, and other countries as well, because this all began under President Reagan. Okay, so let's go back to 1987 when President Reagan talked to the United Nations, and he said, because this is, we're now in this alien reveal, alien disclosure, well, UFO disclosure is leading to alien disclosure. And what happened yesterday in our Congress, we've been told that, yeah, they have alien bodies. They have seen them from crash retrievals. But if everyone remembers, in '87, when President Ronald Reagan spoke to the United Nations, he said, perhaps we need some kind of outside force, like an alien threat, to bring the world together. So this is the seeds were planted under his administration, and that's why he was dubbed with the Star Wars system. They called it Star Wars because Star Wars was out back then, but it was the SDI, the Strategic Defense Initiative, and that was to basically put weapons in space. But it's not just weapons. There's all kinds of stuff there. So they decided, well, and they got together, him and Gorbachev and Maggie Thatcher, your old lady there, and they all got together and they said, well, how can they knew, first of all, let me go back to this, is that he, through executive order, wanted everyone to stop using the word Nibiru. Now, Sitchin's books were out from the 60s and the 70s. So this was out there. This was not just like von Daniken. Both of them were pioneers, granddaddies, as I call them, of the ancient astronaut theory. So Reagan got a hold of this and thought, we can't let people know that this thing is going to come in. It's going to create panic. It's going to change the status quo. We want to everybody's got to keep paying their mortgages and, keep feeding the debt system and all that. So they decided, well, they're going to do something about it behind the scenes. And the three of them got together and said, well, we're going to try to retard the warming. And we're going to try to get in the way of the climate change through technology. And that is when everything started going up. And it's been going up like over since then. I mean, there's tons of stuff up there now. And there's mirrors, prisms, all kinds of things that are creating all kinds of anomalies that when people look up and they take pictures, they're like, what the heck is that? Why is the sun look like a hexagram? Or why is there a black dot on the sun? Why is the sun white? We have a yellow star. Our sun is called Sol, and it's a yellow star. Now everything is like a flashlight, and it's like a blinding. So they're doing all kinds of stuff for multiple reasons to try to retard the warming, to get in the way, to stop the climate change, and also to obfuscate the fact that this system is here. They don't want people panicking and seeing that, because with the system comes the beings that belong to the system. And this is what this drip disclosure era is going to end up leading us to. So what we're in here in America with all these hearings now that we've got Congress's attention, and the Senate is going to pass these new rules very soon about disclosure and declassifying certain files and what's considered should be classified and what isn't, based on the JFK Act, that whole thing. I mean, it's amazing what's happening. It's wonderful to watch it, to witness it, and to be alive at this time.
Just to draw back briefly, and I'm just fascinated by this system, not the second sun. But I mean, for years now, and obviously you're following this far closer than me, but I've seen pictures and short film clips of people that claim to have filmed the sun, and there's another one. So how accurate and how true are these images? I mean, are they really seeing this, because I would have thought if they can see it, it's going to be a regular thing, surely. Why are they only seeing it intermittently?
Great question. Okay, so there's a confluence of things going on. Yes, sometimes they are seeing the actual object, and I'm not going to just call it a second sun, because remember, it has 7 planets. Yeah. So there are other planets that orbit this second sun that show up from time to time. I prove this in my third book, Who Are the Angels? I have a chapter in there about what eclipsed the sun during the crucifixion of Christ. The Bible is a record. It's a historical record. You can extract the religion out of it, and it is one of the best records for extraterrestrial interactions, interventions, and extraterrestrials in biblical prophecy, which I unpack. Okay, so what has been will be again. There is nothing new under the sun. Okay, so I was intrigued. What made everything go dark for 3 hours during the crucifixion of Christ? Okay, and it says the time was, like from noon to 3 p.m., which is daylight. Okay, so when we have a solar eclipse, regular solar eclipses that happen with our moon, they don't take 3 hours.
No, I was just going to say that, yeah.
Okay, so something else eclipsed the sun during the crucifixion of Christ. And what I believe that was, and I unpack it and prove it in my book, was what the Hopi tribe called the Blue Kachina. So the Blue Kachina is now, everybody's renaming this system. So in my fifth book, I go over all the names because it really depends on where you're from. Are you coming into it right now from the University of Berkeley, California, where they've now renamed, they've reordered the planets. They decided
that's where you're going to stay, isn't it?
Yeah.
Where you first heard it is where you're going to stay with it, isn't it? Basically.
Yes, unless you're intellectually curious and you want to see.
But you're going back to the point of origin.
The point of origin, right? So Planet 9 today is that planet, in my opinion. Okay, the blue planet, the big blue Kachina, which is what the Hopi tribes called it. And what was their prophecy? They said, when you see the blue Kachina, the red Kachina is going to follow, and that's going to create the new world, the next age to come. So the red Kachina is Nibiru. Okay, the red, Carlos Muñez Ferrada was a Chilean astronomer from the 1940s who was very accurate in his predictions about this. And he called it a comet planet because it has tails, which looks like wings. So you go back into the ancient records and you'll see in Egypt, ancient Egypt, you'll see in Samaria, in Persia, which is today's Iran, all these pictures written and impressed into stone of these big red orbs with wings. Okay, this is Nibiru. Okay, and as Nibiru, and we're seeing it. It is here. It has not passed the Earth yet. When it passes the Earth, it's going to pass the Earth twice. Okay, so because its orbit is being pulled into the sun. So it comes in from the southwest. It's going to go around the sun once, and then it comes around. It's going to pass the Earth and then go around the sun. And when it gets around the sun's energy is going to catapult it back out. And when it passes the Earth the second time, that's the terrible day of the Lord that the Old Testament prophets all talked about.
Is this when these beings are going to revisit?
Well, that's another piece. Okay, so I would say that's going to happen before that time. Okay, because remember, there's two passes, and we're getting ready for this visitation, the return of these gods, and many of them are already here. Okay, they have this ancient appointment, like it's an appointed time on our timeline. One of the reasons why I don't make predictions, and because I've learned from Sitchin, not because I got threatened by anybody, and he did, because they said to him, "You don't ever tell anyone in your lectures because otherwise we'll shut you down." And he was always tight-lipped, and they didn't never shut him down, and he died at a ripe old age from natural causes. So he listened to that, but he was clearly shaken by, when I met him, by what happened with what happened to Robert S. Harrington. Okay, so there was this cover up that went on for a few decades over this. They did not want anyone to know that this thing was coming in. All right, so we're seeing it. And in answer to your question, what people are seeing, they're seeing a number of things. Sometimes they're seeing the actual planets that are coming around the sun, and it looks like two suns, but the planets are so big, it just looks like the sun has a twin something. And other times they're seeing a solar simulator, which is technology that we've put up there to retard the warming, and also to obfuscate. Remember, light does 5 different things. It reflects, it refracts, it illuminates, and it obfuscates. Okay, so it covers everything up, so you can't see what's going on. However, they have these telescopes. Okay, all these, the SOHO system, there's like a dozen of them, more than that are focused on the sun. That's all they do every day, 24/7. And they publish it. It's public. You can go to NASA's website and watch it live. Okay, you can see the video of what's happening on the sun. They're studying the sun's solar flares, the sunspots, the coronal mass ejections. And guess what we see show up around the sun? We see planets, we see moons, we see spaceships.
So how does NASA pass that off then? Are these images removed, but unfortunately people see them before they're removed? How does that work?
Yes, sometimes they are, and there's blackouts on these on these space telescopes, and and there's glitches, and then they put little squares on top of things so that we don't see what they're covering up, and we see that they're covering up something. Yep. Okay, so we see that, and then other times no. There's the information is coming so fast, and it's hard to keep up with it. I wrote in my 5th book about how the ISS covers stuff up, and how NASA covers stuff up from the ISS, because the ISS is also on a live loop. So if anybody, any time of day, can go and see what are they looking at from the ISS. So there is a 10-second delay. There is these 2 producers, the INCO and the CATO, and it's their job to make sure that, if something is showing up, they're going to put snow. They do this RBG cycle, which is the red, the green, and the blue, so you can't see what's going on, and it just looks like like a television set that just went all wonky, and snow, and they block things out. However, this to err is human. These are just human men, and sometimes they're talking to their wives, doing something else. They get distracted, and something slips in, and once that slips in, that genie is out of the bottle, not going in, because somebody is on our side, on Earth, recording,
monitoring and watching.
Exactly.
But they'll have a team of people. I'm not saying that doesn't happen either, Ella. I'm sure it does. Can we? It's fascinating this, but before we just move on, can we go back to your 1995 sighting? I'd love to hear a little. It was 95, weren't it?
Yes.
Just I want for our listeners to describe what you saw, if possible. Yes. If you don't mind, please.
Well, I lived on Indian Rocks Beach, and every night it's a thing there to go and watch the sunset. And because it's on the west coast of Florida, the Gulf of Mexico. And my husband used to work on, we met on a cruise ship, and so he would go to work for the evening, and I would go to the beach and watch the sunset. It was just my daily routine. And it was a beautiful, warm, balmy night. And myself and my neighbors would just hang out on the beach after the sunset, because it was just, nice.
Beautiful, idyllic, yeah.
And that's what was happening. It was a perfectly clear night, not a cloud in the sky. The sun went down, the stars came out, and you can see, the stars, and then the horizon was kind of like lavender purpley. And I started hearing swooshing sounds. So I thought it was probably a pod of dolphins, because that's a common thing. The dolphins come close to the shore sometimes and they feed, because there's like all these schools of fish there. And I thought, oh, it must be a pod of dolphins. And it got louder and and I was like, no, wait a second, that's not dolphins. Oh my God, it can't be a whale. Whales don't come in the Gulf of Mexico. And then I started to see metallics come out of the water. And I thought, oh my God, what is that? A submarine? What is a submarine? And I was like, oh my God, what is that? And then all of a sudden the thing just came up out of the water. It emerged. And I was like about 100 yards away from it, because I was sitting on the beach, on the shoreline, and it was in the water, and it just like hovered for like under a minute. Okay. And I watched all the sea foam and all the water just kind of swishing.
That's what I also, obviously we wanted to continue with this, but was water running off it as well as it's coming out?
Yes. And I think that's why it was hovering, just to kind of get clear of the water. And I was just like gobsmacked, like jaw dropping. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And then it just shut up like in a New York second. And I watched it become like a star, like, because the stars were out. And then I saw this like black thing, like it just like, it almost looked like it opened up some sort of portal and it disappeared and then it was gone. And I didn't see it. It wasn't a star. It was nothing. It just went black. And I just was in shock. So, I talked to a friend of mine who was a member of MUFON at the time. I wasn't a member of MUFON at the time. I certainly am now. But and that's how I learned what was going on, and that I wasn't the only one that saw it. And there were a lot of calls that night because people saw something along the beaches. So they saw it from different angles.
How does this fit with the beings, these aliens, for want of a better word, that are in the star system that's coming? How does?
Oh, wow, that's a great question. So I know what
I'm not asking you to give us the answers, Ella.
Okay.
I'm just sort of throwing it out there because you've got a great opinion, I'm sure.
Absolutely. No, I just like to tell everybody I know, what I don't know, I don't know, So here's what I know. I know that we have an inner Earth civilization. This is why it's called the alien presence, because a lot of these beings have been coexisting with us for millennia. Okay, they're not only written in stone, they're written in the biblical narrative, and I've extracted them out of the Bible. Christians like, oh, they're all demons. I'm in the middle of these two camps. Like the Christians, oh, all the aliens are demons. And then the New Agers are like, oh, well, they haven't wiped us off the planet by now, so they can't be hostile. That's also a lie. They're not all demons, and they're not all benevolent, okay? Just like us. Us Earth humans, we've got good human beings, and we've got evil human beings. Why would we think that the aliens and the ETs are any different? Just because a being or a group of beings may be technologically more advanced than us doesn't necessarily equate to being more evolved or being, moral or spiritual or anything.
Evolved in different ways, haven't they? Yeah.
Yes. Well, there's, soul evolvement, and then there's technology. Yep. Okay. So I found through going down rabbit holes that there was a galactic war, okay, that has happened more than once. And our planet was in the middle of it. Okay, so I can take you through just like real briefly the floods. So the Bible basically records two major floods that have been corroborated by archaeologists to planet Earth. Okay, so the Bible starts off with Genesis 1:1, and the Spirit hovered over the waters of the planet. That was after the first flood. Okay, then we have all the events in the book of Genesis, which is basically a synopsis of what went on after the first flood. Now, what was the first flood? That was the sinking of the civilization of Atlantis and Lemuria. This is like Plato wrote about it. We're seeing evidence of it. I'm not going to try to prove it to you, but that's what happened. Then we had the second flood, which I call Noah's flood. Okay. And that was the same situation, very similar, because history repeats itself. And why does history repeat itself? Well, we can all pontificate about, well, because people don't learn its lessons, or they come back for another rebellion or have another go at it. And that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with warfare, spiritual warfare between these beings, and we are in the middle of it. Okay. Ephesians 6:12 says we war not against flesh and blood, but against powers, principalities, rulers of the darkness of this present world, and spiritual wickedness in the heavens, which are alien beings. Okay. And what do they want? Well, they want to harvest. Okay. The earth is like a farm to them. And this is what I say to those New Agers who think, or they follow, these different cults that think that, oh, well, they haven't wiped us off the planet by now, so they must be good. But there are worse things than death.
Yeah.
Okay. And there are things on this earth, there are sufferings that people go through on a daily basis that wish to die. Okay. Death is not the worst thing. Okay. And why is that? Because human beings are created with souls. We all have souls, and souls came from the Creator God. Okay. And they want that soul energy. They want our memories. They want our emotions. They want to get us riled up and going. And they're Machiavellian in nature, meaning divide and conquer. They know that if we all got together and we all got on the same page, we'd be powerful. And
which is what Reagan was suggesting.
Yes.
World united, or
yes.
Yes. Is that what you were alluding to earlier?
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
But what is to come, what is planned, what is prophesied and predicted, I don't believe we can change. I believe we have to accept it and see the writing on the wall. The seeds of it have already been planted, and we have to do the best we can to navigate through this, because we are going to go through something really intense over the next, we're already in it. It's already begun. Okay. It's just a matter of unfolding. So
no, the two floods, was this an act of God, the supreme being then that's done this?
Yes and no. Okay. So a lot of people love to blame God for things that they don't understand. But this is what I unpack in book 2, Who is God? Is that the Bible was mistranslated, okay, from Hebrew to English. All right. So if you read the Bible from the Hebrew, and this is where Sitchin came in to my influence, okay, which I agree with him because he was a linguist and he understood language. And Hebrew is a language of physics. Okay. So there's 22 letters, which represent the 22 constellations. Okay. And every word in Hebrew, it comes from a 3-letter root. It's like a tree. And then you branch it. And there's all these different derivatives of these different roots. So for instance, the word Elohim, okay, which is something Sitchin was very, well known for saying this. And I 100% agree with him on this. Elohim is plural for gods with an S. It's masculine plural participle. And in the Bible, if you read the Bible in English, you will not see this, because every time the names of God show up in the Hebrew, the English either puts 2 words, either Lord or God, not with an S. Okay. So when people read the English Bible, they think it's one God. Okay, that is being talked about, or the story. And actually that's not true. It's a cast of characters of gods. Okay, so this is why people have these crises when they, religious crises, and they go, oh, well, God is contradicting himself. First, he says, don't sacrifice your children to Moloch and don't put your children in the fire. And then he comes along and tests Abraham and says, oh, if you love me so much, sacrifice your miracle baby, your menopausal miracle baby. Why would God do that when he specifically ruled, do not do that? He doesn't need to test that way. And the answer, this is something that I questioned. And when I went into it and I unpacked the Hebrew and I read the whole chapter, it doesn't even say what it says in English. It's a group of gods, and Satan was among them. And it actually says that. The book of Job 1 and 2, it says, the B'nai Ha-Elohim, and Satan was among them. B'nai Ha-Elohim is sons of the gods. So we've got a whole generation of God groups, okay, that are mentioned in the Bible multiple times that have been interacting with humans, that created all these, started to spawn these religions and misunderstandings and just complete misunderstandings. So the Abraham story was not the creator God. It was these other gods that were working with Satan. Let's call them Anunnaki if you want, because that's Sitchin called them the Anunnaki. They were the gods that came and genetically manipulated humankind. Now, the error that people get when they read the Sitchin material and they think, oh, he says the Anunnaki created humankind. No. I prove that's impossible because the record shows that the women were on the earth when the Anunnaki came, which basically means that humans were already created.
They couldn't. Yeah.
Okay. So what I am basically unpacking in my book series is that humans were genetically manipulated, downgraded. Okay. Everyone talks about it the other way, that, oh, the ETs come and they're trying to help us evolve by inserting this into our DNA. But we started out, and this is where the Church of Rome is culpable, okay, for deleting 77 Jewish books that, because of anti-Semitism, out of the Bible that basically tell this story. This is our history.
But it didn't fit the narrative that they wanted, though, did it?
That's right, because they were manipulating the narrative. Okay, so they went in and they deleted all these books. So the first and second book of Adam and Eve basically tells this whole story of what went on during that whole drama. And the book of Genesis only gives you a brief synopsis. And everybody thinks, oh, it's about an apple. And Eve got, tempted by the serpent, and let's blame the woman. This has created centuries of sexism, misogyny, as well as anti-Semitism. And that's just my opinion for what it's worth. But that is the history that we are dealing with here.
Brilliant. And I haven't had to say much at all, have I? And I think Leslie's back, so we must have a few questions. And keep the questions coming, people. Capital letters, and let's just hit Ella hard with some questions.
Oh, please be gentle.
Les, we can't hear you, mate.
Oh, yeah.
Now you can, yeah.
No,
Ella, I don't know if you can tilt your camera down a bit. There's lots and lots of glare coming off your top light.
Oh, I have a sunlight, and it's high noon here.
Yeah. Oh, is that what it is? Yeah.
We probably can't talk about that, Les.
So I can't. I don't control the sun, but I'll sit back. How about that? Is that better?
All good.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, we've just got what we've got, haven't we? No, that's okay. Right. So basically, yeah. One question, I think, but GDog78 is, and if I can put that on the screen, and I think we're going to talk about that a little bit later on. Is that correct?
Yeah, the government disclosure. We're going to touch on that. I know Ella's got some views on that. And anybody else who's got any questions relating to that, thanks, GDog, for bringing it to our attention.
Yeah.
Because we shall... any more questions, Les?
Yeah, we've just got a statement going about the two sons from the Revenants. Paul Sinclair, I've seen two sons just before Christmas this year, so interesting.
Really? Do you know, Revenant, just before the show, we did consider sending you out the link, but we'd not spoken to Ella about that, so we didn't think it was fair on her, because we know that you've always got something interesting to say. So, yeah, it's something you're going to share with us in next week or two then, please, Rev. And great question.
Okay, so let's have a look what we've got here. We have Andrew Sheehan. What form do the inner Earth aliens take? Do they look like a proper Greys, for example?
Yeah, aimed at you, I think, Ella.
You, Ella, yeah.
Yes, that's a great question. And my first book unpacks that. There's a whole bunch of different types of hybrids that live inside the earth. And this goes back to what we were talking about with the first flood and the second flood. And the reason for these floods were a confluence of things. One, the passing of the system, and two, the creator God, because they were going against the laws of creation by mixing these different species together and creating miscreants, or Nephilim, as they're also called. And in Hebrew, the word Nephal means to fall. So these are known as the fallen ones, or the fallen angels, or even in today's modern Hebrew, they're also called rejects. Okay, so what we have inside the earth is a bunch of different types of hybrids. So Greys, for instance, there's, in my book, I basically delineate, and I know what I know, what I don't know, I don't know. But here I know that there's 35 different types of Greys. And I spell it Gray to differentiate between the color gray, Grey, because Greys are not all gray in color. They're white, they're brown, they're tan, they're navy, they're metallic looking, they're cybergenetic hybrids. There's Greys that are hybridized with reptilian DNA, and there's Greys that are hybridized with insectoid DNA. And reptilians and insectoids are ancient enemies. Just look at nature. Okay, what do iguanas eat? Okay, yeah. Insects. So, but if you've ever seen a praying mantis kill a lizard, you can really see some ancient stuff going on there. So what they were doing before the first flood, during the times of Atlantis, and what they were doing after the flood, before Noah's flood, they were hybridizing. They were using earth women to create hybrids as well. And there's nothing new under the sun. Okay, so that's part of my story, is waking up to the fact that they were using me to create hybrids. Okay, until I had a near-death experience in 2010, and I saw Yeshua again. Okay, so he keeps showing up in my life, and because religion is not enough to keep me in the game. Okay, and I'm going to just say that it's all about a personal relationship with the Lord, with the Creator God, with the Messiah. And that's who I met. That's who Yeshua is. He's also known as Jesus, but his real name is Yeshua. And he told me all this stuff. And I had not published my book on the aliens yet. And he said, you're going to rewrite your book with me in it. And I did, and it's turned into 6 books. So I've downloaded a bunch of stuff, and this all has to do with his original blueprint for humans. Okay, that these beings want to have come and tried and are attempting to corrupt the image and likeness of God in humans. And what I was telling Paul earlier about what the Anunnaki did, they genetically manipulate. We talk about the fall of mankind, which goes back to Genesis, and the curses that were doled out, the curse on the earth, the curse on the man, the curse on the woman. This was not just about curses, although that's definitely a big piece of it. This is about genetic downgrading. And this is what I was saying. Go back to, if people can go and find the books, the first and second books of Adam and Eve, you get the whole story instead of just this little brief synopsis about the tree and the apple. He tried to destroy the humans. So after the flood, the first flood, the Lord put humans, and I call them the Evadamic race. Adam and Eve Adamic, and they were like the models, and they were put on the earth, and they walked with God. It says they had everything, and in my opinion, they had all 12 strands of DNA operating. Okay, so this is what we all aspire to when we look at Marvel movies, and we go like, oh, superhumans with superpowers, and being switched on with clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, all this stuff that God created us to be, that these other types of beings have. So the ruler of this planet was, I'm going to call, because nobody knows his original name, I'm going to call him Lucifer Satan. Okay, and that's what how I write it in my book, Lucifer/Satan, because Satan is a Hebrew word that means adversary or rebel. It's not a name. God and Lord are not names, they're titles. Okay, so he's a rebel, but we're going to call him Lucifer. Lucifer is an interdimensional dragon being. Okay, hybrid with and he's written about in the Gnostics. Okay, is in the book of Job, called Leviathan. The Bible says that he is the God of this world, the prince of the powers of the air. He rules this world, evidenced by the fact that the interaction between him and Jesus, when he tested Jesus didn't deny that he had the power to give him all these things. He says, if you bow down and worship me, I'll give you all these kingdoms. They'll be yours. Who is he to offer him kingdoms of the world if he wasn't the God of this world? So let's establish that. That's what it says. And that's where the battle it comes from. So he did not want humans, us, ruling the planet. God put us on the planet to be stewards of the planet, to take care of the animals and all the creatures, and to have this ongoing relationship with the Lord. And he interfered with that. And how did he do it? The first act was genetic manipulation. So they went from 12 strands of DNA to 2 strands of DNA, which is what most of us have today. Okay, so the geneticists, when they look at our DNA, they go, whoa, what's all that stuff? It's junk. They call it junk DNA, but it's really disabled. Okay, so this is where the Messiah comes in. What did he promise to do? He promises to restore all things, to restore all of creation, okay, to restore us humans through his salvation, through Yeshua, which means salvation, to our original glory bodies, okay? And that's what Adam and Eve had when they walked in the Garden of Eden with the Lord. They walked in their glory bodies. That's why there was a transition from going from the glory body to then going to all this misery and feeling ashamed and all this other kind of stuff, because they had genetic manipulation. And out of that came all these different races and genetic experiments that is our history. So what's happening inside the earth is a remnant of what went on from the last galactic war. And these beings have been organizing, okay, for a long time to prepare themselves for the return of the system, of the Nemesis Nibiru system, and the return of the Lord. And when I had my near-death experience, I know this sounds crazy, but I'm just telling you like it is. I was told by Yeshua that he is returning with Nibiru.
That was my question, and I know we've got some more questions, but I was going to say, how did the message come to you? And you've just told us. We might be able to touch on that a little bit more, if elaborate on it after this next question, if Les has got any.
Sure.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Ella. And it's a little bit of a shameless plug by one of our viewers for me and Paul, and also it includes our absolutely fantastic guests as well, Ella. So I'll show that on the screen. Thunder 65, Truth Proof, Paul and Les, the silver lining to the dark cloud our Earth is currently in.
As you can see, it's bouncing off my head already. So all good.
And made all the much better with excellent guests like Ella, who we have on tonight.
I've not had to say, it's absolutely fabulous. And more questions for Ella then, please, Les, if we've got
Yeah,
any.
and I think we're kind of touching now on with, and Andy Ramsden is asking, what do you think about the description of the craft being a cube in a clear orb? And
This is this
yes.
disclosure. Are we going on to that a little bit later?
We will be doing that, Andy, shortly. So,
I've got another question. Then we'll put this one in from Tony D. Ella, what is your take on the Quran? Is it relevant? Please don't get into trouble like Salman Rushdie. I don't know how much you want to talk about that, Ella.
Well, just to go back to the first question about the UFO disclosure and the black cube in the clear. So if you go to my Facebook page, I just posted that last night, pictures of the black cube inside the clear sphere that was reported by our pilots in 2021. And there's also links and things, so you can get more information about that. But
Brilliant.
that's what David Grush and the other witnesses were referring to in yesterday's hearing. And I think it's fantastic. I am so excited about it. I feel vindicated, as I'm sure every other UFO researcher and experiencer, feels that this is finally coming out and coming out to be able to talk about it without ridicule, without mockery. But here's the thing that I've been writing about for years, and that is racism. Okay, racism is the #1 social problem on planet Earth. Okay, if we can't get along with each other, all right, if we can't accept our differences, okay, even the battle of the sexes, between men and women, all this stuff that make up Earth humans, okay, how? I'm going to put the question to you guys. How are we going to get along and interact with ET if we can't accept each other? And there's a whole lot of different ETs out there. There's not just one. I mean, we just barely touched upon the Greys. The Greys are like cybergenetic bots. Okay, they're clones. Okay, they can't procreate. All right, that's part of what's behind the alien abductions and the alien hybridization program. Okay, so who controls the Greys? Well, from my research and my opinion and my experiences, the reptilian draconian race. So there's a lot of different types of serpent races out there. Okay. And, for years, anti-Semitism was full of that. Jews were called serpents, okay, because of whatever happened in the past. But here's the truth about humans, okay, is that we all have the reptilian brain, okay? Carl Sagan wrote about it. It's called the medulla oblongata, which is also called the reptilian brain. The humans are made with 3 layers of brains. That's what makes us different than our cat, okay? Like we have a cat has the reptilian brain, cat has the mammalian brain, doesn't have what they call the Brahman brain or the God brain. That's our soul. That's what God gives us to make us human, okay? When we leave this human body, we're still a soul because our souls were created by the Creator. Okay, so this is something that needs to level out the playing field to basically, delete and disable all this racism by saying, oh, you have Rh negative blood, then you're a reptilian. Well, Rh negative actually comes from reptilian human hybrids, not just pure reptilian. And these days, okay, in 2023, people are mixed all around the planet. My 4th book, Covenants, goes into where all the lost tribes of Israel ended up. And they ended up all over the place. Okay, they're in Europe, they're in Afghanistan, they're in Africa, they're in Japan, they're in America. In the Native American tribes, they still, through oral tradition, use the name of Yahuwah. Who knows that? How do the Cherokees knew that the Great Spirit was named Yahuwah? Okay, and that was the name that they were covering up because they didn't want the Masoretic Jews did not want the Gentiles to abuse the name of God, so they covered it up. Okay, when they wrote they were in Babylon for 70 years. They rewrote the Old Testament, and they put the nikudot, which are the vowels. So they went from ancient Aramaic to more of a regular modern Hebrew, which has vowels, and they deliberately did this, and they succeeded in their plan to confuse the Gentiles, and because they did not want them invoking their God in vain. This is what they were all about, to try to protect this. So they put the vowels of the word Adonai and Elohim, and they transposed it on the Tetragrammaton, which is basically, what people have created, Jehovah. And there's no J in the Hebrew language, so there is no J sound. So that's a fake name. That's a false name. That's some other, and it's almost like a masquerade or a theater. Okay, so these beings, these reptilian beings, they have the ability to masquerade as human, as angels, as gods. And they've been doing this really well for millennia. Okay, and it says so in the scriptures that they do this. Okay, and remember, the word Satan is adversary and rebel. Who is the adversary? Who is the rebel? The Draconians. Okay, that's not to say that every reptilian anything is evil. Okay, this is a group of beings that very rare, they hardly ever come to the surface. They send the Greys to the surface to do their bidding. That's why the Greys are always involved in alien abductions. Okay, and it's all over the world. It's not just here. Okay, and that's why people, there's all these different programs. There's the hybridization program. There's also the program that people have to say, well, why do people get abducted and then they get put back like a few hours later? Okay, abduction connotes kidnapping, does it not? Okay, when we have a kidnapping here, someone's been abducted, they're gone. Where did they go? But the aliens put people back a few hours later. So it's not like a full-fledged kidnapping. Okay, so why? People have to ask why. Why are they putting you back? Because they're implanting people. There's different programs that people get abducted for. Okay, and implantation is one of their main things that they do. Okay, so when I told you at the beginning of of our talk today, of our discussion, what happened to me when I was 2 with the nosebleeds. So I had this little BB size thing in my right nostril all my life. I suffered from allergies. I had, sleep issues. I had needle phobia. If I saw a needle, I would just pass out. And I was like that until the age of 25. Okay. So when I had my near-death experience, the little thingy in my nose, it disappeared. I woke back I came back. I went through healing and deliverance. It took me like a year. And I have no more allergies, no more sleep paralysis, no more needle phobia. Whatever was here is gone. It's just flat now. So,
Ella, how did you know it was there? Did you have X-ray or anything? How did you know?
Oh, I felt it.
Okay.
I mean, it was always there, and I always had like allergy season. I would go through like a box of tissues a day, and now I don't. And these are all class I found out later through my research and digging down rabbit holes, that I'm not alone in this, that a lot of other abductees, experiencers have the same type of symptoms, these anomalous traumas, the allergies. In fact,
so you'd got a grass allergy, a grass pollen allergy.
I don't have any allergies anymore. No, I was allergic to everything.
But you did have.
Now I have cat. I can't live without my cats.
But you did have. You did have.
I was allergic to everything.
Yeah, just interesting.
Dairy. I couldn't. I had to be gluten free. I had to be dairy. Now I eat wheat. Now I eat dairy. Now I have cats. Now I go out into the pollen. This was an implant. that was blocking my health and well-being. And a lot of people experience this. I'm not alone in this.
Right, we've got one more question there. Ronald Booth, what about the humans seen with greys and the Nordics? Have you got any views on that?
That is a great question. Well, and there's two answers. I'm gonna split this. So one, there is the group of the Nordics, as you mentioned, the blondes, the tall blondes, the human-looking ones. They're not all blonde, by the way. Some of them show up with brown hair, with the blue space suits, and they're all very, sexy looking and, fit and, kind of like Marvel superhuman character looking type beings. They are not all what they seem to be. Okay. The reptilians have the ability to shape shift as humans. Okay. And they can become what you want, they're into your head. They're in your mind. There's a lot of psychological hypnagogy. Okay, hypnosis and hypnagogy, where they come in and they put stuff in your head and they put memories into you and they see what you feel is what in your mind is good, and they will become that. Okay, so I don't 100% trust those stories that they are what they are. That's what they appear to be, but that's not necessarily what they really are. Okay, that's one. Remember, I said I'm going to split this. That's one side of it, is that they have the ability to shapeshift. We know this. We've seen this. I've seen it. I've seen a woman, okay, a banker. I sat in front of this. I couldn't believe this. I mean, I heard about this with David Icke and shapeshifting, and I put this in my book. But then when I saw it with my own two eyes, then I was like, whoa, this is real. So I was sitting at a bank, across this woman, and I saw her eyes change. Like her eyes went into slits and then flipped back. Okay. So they walk among us. They appear to be human. And I also need to insert.
Did she do that? Did she do that to show you?
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, she was a
very
nice woman. There was no like weirdness, except that was weird.
Yeah,
okay.
Truly.
But that basically, yes, maybe it did happen to show me that this is real, that this happens. And then there's the other side, okay, that there is this group of Aryan, it's an Aryan race, the blonde, the tall blondes with the blue eyes and all of that. Hitler connected with them. Hitler, and I don't have to tell you guys about the history, the history, but he was very connected to the this race of beings that he wanted to impress. He wanted to go into the earth and create. They gave him, I have this in my fourth book, this is researched and referenced and everything, that they allegedly gave him, technology to help him win the war, which obviously didn't work. It fell apart. But what caused it? We have this movie out, Oppenheimer, and one of the biggest pieces of this movie that in Oppenheimer that was revelatory to me was how Robert Oppenheimer was American, even though he was educated in Europe and he had that influence. It was his idea and his decision to use anti-Semitism against Hitler to win the war. That's what created the Manhattan Project, where they gathered all these Jewish scientists and put them on this project to help them create the bomb. So I found that fascinating, because my material in my fourth book goes into Hitler's contact with these inner earth beings, and he was obsessed with this Aryan race. So that's another piece of who these blondes may very well be. Then, as I said, I was going to split it. Then there's this other piece of information that I've also tried to weave in, because it's, this is about disclosure, was William Tompkins' whistleblower testimony. Now, he passed in 2017, but he's written books selected by extraterrestrials. And he talked to MUFON in 2017, which they named their symposium after him, the Secret Space Program. He talked to Project Camelot, Carrie Cassidy, and he saw these beings. He witnessed them. He was in the control room, the mission control room, the private feed, when Apollo 11 landed on the moon. And that was part of that cover-up. What were they covering up? The fact that they didn't only succeed to get to the moon and land on the moon, but they encountered aliens. Okay, and he had this photographic memory, and he drew exactly what he saw coming through the feed, which were these spaceships that were all hovering just above the surface of the crater of the Sea of Tranquility, which is where Apollo 11 was programmed to land, automatically. But if everyone knows the story about what happened with Neil Armstrong, he had to take control of the craft and manually land it, because there were these other spaceships that he was encountering. And what William Tompkins testified to was that it wasn't just the spaceships, it was the beings. They were 9-foot-tall lizard men standing next to their ship, greeting them as they came to the moon. Okay, so that's part of the cover-up. That was why they allowed all these false beliefs to go out there. Oh, we never landed on the moon. Oh, it's a Stanley Kubrick thing. And the Stanley Kubrick thing did happen because NASA wanted to have some sort of public backup in case they failed. But they didn't fail. They succeeded beyond their imagination, which is why they're going back to the moon. So let's go back to William Tompkins. These are contracts and agreements that our government has made with these groups of alien presence.
Why would they need to make a deal, a contract with them, Ella? If there's just plain devil's advocate here. No. I'm not saying you're wrong, but if they're supremely advanced and got this supreme intellect ahead of us, why would they need to make a deal with us?
Well, I'm going to tell you something that a lot of people may not like. Okay, it's kind of our worst nightmare. It's very disturbing. And I have published this in my book based on the research, okay, that Eisenhower made a pact with the Greys, okay? And what was the contract about? Okay, because an agreement is I give you this and you give me that, right? Okay, and what they wanted was the ability to abduct humans just temporarily, take some samples, take some eggs, take some sperm, take some skin grafts, because they needed, they're working this hybridization program. That's one piece of it, okay? The other was the fact that they need us. They're like, we think we're the top of the food chain. We are not, okay? So what they feed off of us is our energy, our soul energy, our memories, emotions, and the reptilians call it loosh. It's like, give me a fix, give me some loosh. Whereas, humans are like, oh, give me a beer, give me a this. This is like, to them, that's what they're after. So how do they get that? They have to get it through either creating problems between us, and getting us upset and getting us in war and conflict and all these things, depression, and they siphon. It's like a harvesting type of a thing. So what happened back with the Eisenhower was that, okay, so the good ETs, there are good ETs. Okay, so let me go back to 1947 when the bombs dropped, because this is what got their attention. So when Truman, okay, made the decision to drop the bombs on Japan, it woke up the inner Earth aliens, because then they were like, whoa, they have that technology to do that.
This can affect us.
We have to stop them. Okay, so that's why the UFO era began, with the crashes and the Roswell and so many different types of sightings, and the history is rife. We have so much material about what's happened since 1947, and why are UFOs showing up all around the world at nuclear sites and messing with it, like disabling it and shutting things down. There's so many stories here of how they've done that, okay? Because they're trying to prevent a nuclear disaster, because they don't believe that us humans, you know, are responsible with this type of power, okay? And the end time prophecy says that this world is going to get changed into the next, the new age, the next age, the age to come, the millennial reign of Christ on earth, the Aquarian age, the golden age. It's called many different things, but it's not going to happen through the floods like it happened in the past. And what did the Lord promise with the rainbow covenant? That he would never destroy the earth by flooding again. That doesn't mean that there aren't going to be floods. Talking about destroying the whole world, because those were like major deluges, like the whole world. It wasn't just like, flooding in the Sahara Desert. You know what I mean? This was like the whole thing, that the earth was going to be destroyed by fire. Okay, on the third round, before the age to come. So this is something, I mean, end time prophecy is open for everyone. The aliens can read it. They know what's been written down. They know what's being planned. Okay, so they're trying to prevent that from happening.
I was going to say, can they prevent it in your mind? Is that what you think?
I think they're trying to, yes. And will they? I don't know. I can't say, you know, what I do know, what is on the prophetic calendar, and that is that all the world wars are connected. Okay, so we can make a connection between World War I and World War II, and God knows we have tons of movies about that, right? And the connection between World War II and World War III. So what did they do at the end of World War II? Well, the Balfour Declaration, Britain basically, and the United Nations together made a decision to give Palestine to the Jews so that they had a place to go to be safe from the anti-Semitism in Europe. And the State of Israel was born in a day, in May 14th of 1948. Well, I start my first book off with why Jerusalem? What is so important about Jerusalem, and why are they always fighting over it? Because Jerusalem is an ancient space portal, also evidenced in Sitchin's work. And the United Nations is going to get transformed. Okay, my fourth edition of book 1 has got this in it. And I just came across serendipitously this letter that was recently declassified, that was written by Robert Oppenheimer and Albert Einstein to President Roosevelt. I mean, it's out there. People can look it up. It's not secret anymore. And I'm publishing it because what are they talking about? Aliens. They're talking about aliens. Okay. And when I was going down rabbit holes in the 1990s, I met Colonel, he was a retired Air Force Colonel, Steve Wilson, and he was an experiencer. And one of the things he told me was that the United Nations was going to get transformed, and it was going to become the United Federation of Planets. And back in the 90s, even 10 years ago, this was considered, you're talking Star Trek, you're fantasizing. Well, you know, Star Trek isn't far from our reality. Okay, I do these spiels and these conferences, The Truth is Stranger Than Fiction. And there's 65 different technologies that were introduced in the original Star Trek series that are now part of our reality. Okay, so they were laying out something for the future. So just because we're not there yet doesn't mean it's not going to happen. Okay, so what does the United Nations regret doing? Well, if you go back to the Obama administration wanted to undo the 1967 borders, and they wanted to. He basically decreed by executive order to take Jerusalem away from Israel. Okay, and he ordered at the time that any American that was born in Israel that was born in Jerusalem, okay, could not have on their birth certificate place of birth Jerusalem, Israel. It could only say Jerusalem without a country. Okay, so this obviously started a lot of legal issues. One thing led to another, and then we had President Trump come in, and he undid all of that. He not only undid that, he moved the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Okay, and so there's a whole thing going on there. Okay, the United Nations wants to undo their decision to give that land to Israel. Okay, well, this is not going to get sorted out like by talking. No. This is going to be the foundation for World War III. And the end time prophecies are very clear about the nations of the world, who they are, where they come from, the kings of the north, the kings of the east, the 10 horns, which is Europe, these 10 nations that come together in Europe, and the United Nations, how they all go against Israel. Okay, well, let's not forget, okay, another piece that has happened in our recent disclosure era, and that is the retired Israeli space chief Chaim Eshed came out during the Trump administration at the end of December of 2020 and said, well, we've been in contact with the Galactic Federation, and America and Israel are both working with them, and President Trump knows about it, but they said that people on Earth are not ready for them yet. They're not ready to disclose themselves to us yet. They need to get ready for them. Okay. I mean, that just came out of the blue. But again, another octogenarian, William Tompkins, he had this 40, 50-year career, a stellar career. And all of a sudden in his 80s, he decides to spill the beans. And thank God he did. God bless him. May his memory be a blessing, which it is, because if we didn't have these whistleblowers tell us this stuff, we would be like mushrooms, kept in the dark and fed,
You've just that up to a perfect stop with the word whistleblowers, because we've got about 30 minutes left, and I want to hear your views on the latest whistleblowers that have been talking and spreading their truth about what they know. And I'm sure you've got an opinion.
I think it's great.
Yeah, and some questions, please, for Ella. Obviously not just on the whistleblowers, but whatever you like, guys. But let's just see if we can get a few more questions in before 9 p.m. Right, over to you. What are your views on this, Ella?
On the whistleblowers?
Yes.
I support them. I pray for them. I pray for their protection. I think that it's so timely. I think they're courageous and brave. And this is, our country has been split, over the past 2-3 administrations. It's really been bad, terrible. Okay. And this is really something to celebrate and talk about, is that this issue is the one thing in our Congress that is bipartisan, that both Democrats and Republicans are coming together on.
Yeah.
Nothing else. They didn't get together on anything else. They were at odds, divided over everything. This is the one thing that is uniting our Congress right now. And I think that's a beautiful thing. I pray that they are going to be guided with wisdom and do things the right way. I think that the steps that are in front of us, the next hearing and the next vote, which is the Senate is going to vote on these new rules. I think that's going to be another game changer, and more whistleblowers are going to come out.
It's opening the door. It's opening the door. It really is.
Yes.
I've heard people. I mean, when I listened to it excuse me, yesterday, yeah. You're listening, and I was kind of quick to form opinion. Well, we've not heard anything new. There's nothing here, but there is actually, and it's monumental because the people that these guys are talking to are going to speak to these guys in private, in some safe environment, we hope, and they're going to arm them with knowledge of where they can go and open even more doors. So I know it's baby steps, but it really is. It's going to be massive.
Yes, I agree. Baby steps, and it helps people to integrate. So I think that's the purpose and the wisdom behind the drip disclosure, which is what we're calling it. Because each piece, like we got a big piece yesterday, confirmation, official, stuff we've already known, but it was just like confirmed. And it's like, then it gives the public a chance to digest it and integrate it and ask questions. And then the next piece is going to come, and then it's going to like, oh, okay, makes sense. So what I think the next piece could possibly be is having to do with the inner earth, because they're asking all these questions. Well, we know that, and this was something that was said that wasn't, it's not what they say, it's what they don't say that is relevant. So yesterday, David Grush never used the word extraterrestrial. The words extraterrestrial were used by the Congress, the representatives who were asking the questions. His answers included words of non-human intelligence, non-human biologics, okay? Meaning, alien being, yeah. Okay? But never, and I'm really into linguistics, okay? Because words matter, because they communicate certain things. And if you don't use the right words, you create misunderstandings. And God knows we don't need any more of that, right? So in my book, I go into the definitions. I'm married to a Brit, okay? So when he came to America, he's an American citizen now, but they would give him an alien card. Okay, so what the heck is that? Okay, so he's British. Okay, maybe he's got a little pointy ear here. He's a little alien, whatever, bald head. He looks alien. I'm joking, okay? But why use that word? Okay, he's human. He's not alien. Okay, an alien is a non-human life form. Okay, an octopus is an alien. We have already established the fact that the octopus species on planet Earth is an alien species. Okay, so we have to start using language that makes sense. All right, so alien doesn't necessarily mean extraterrestrial. Extraterrestrial means it comes off the planet, someplace else. Even another planet in our solar system could be considered extraterrestrial, but not necessarily. There are humans that are extraterrestrial, that aren't alien. People say, oh, Jesus was an alien, but Jesus, by his own admission, said, I am not of this world. My kingdom is not of this world. That, by every sense of the English language, means extraterrestrial, not necessarily alien. He was the Son of Man. Okay, he was a hybrid. He was half man, half God, a demigod in the Greek mythology. And, he was, and a lot of people believe he is God. He was God in the flesh, which is something, a lot of Jews have problems believing that. But the unbelief, the spirit of unbelief, is a spirit, because I've seen it. I've seen people go from atheism to, oh, wow, now they're loving the Lord all of a sudden. So that means that something like an implant or a spirit or some blockage gets removed, like a veil gets lifted, and people start to see the truth about what it is. So Yeshua, Jesus, he's not alien, okay? A non-human is an alien. A gray is an alien. A reptilian, a lizard man is an alien. Even though they're humanoid, like they're bipedal, they have, 2 arms, 2 legs, a torso and a head, that is humanoid, but not necessarily human. So this is what I ask people: how come in all of these like science fiction stories, movies, TV series, the alien comes to Earth and the alien has to learn how to be human and how to interact with humans? Okay, so this is part of this, reality that we're living in, because these aliens are trying to not only replace humans with the hybrids, okay, because they are working on this hybridization program to actually replace us with a better species, transhumanism, a better, level of being, like a spacefaring race, because us humans, we can only take space for so much, right? So they're genetically manipulating. So the genetic manipulation is something that is the same thing is happening again. History is repeating itself. The reason that Atlantis went down, the reason that Noah's floods went down, and what's going to happen at the end of this timeline has to do with the fact that they're mixing and matching and doing things, and it's very experimental, because it didn't work the first 2 times, so who's to say it's going to work this time? And that's where we need intervention, and that's where this Messiah, so the red star that's coming, that is called in the Zohar and the Torah the Messianic star, as a harbinger for the Messiah. So all the religions of the earth have this belief in some type of messianic figure. Okay. And that's something that everyone can connect with. And that is something that's like the next big test that comes about, because there's going to be a counterfeit Messiah that's going to emerge out of World War III, that, the end time Bible prophecy relates to as an antichrist, someone that goes against Jews and Christians and anyone who follows Christ, and like worse than Hitler kind of thing, that comes, who has the Revelation 13 says he calls down fire from heaven. So when you use those words, what does that mean? That means like space weapons, alien technology. So we know that there's going to be some being that's going to emerge through this next drama that we're entering into, that's going to be sort of an alien in a human body, that's going to have all these supernatural powers. The prophecy says that he's going to get a mortal wound to the head, meaning he's going to get like shot dead, and then he's going to rise 3 days later, and the whole world is going to see him, which we have, television and internet technology. And then he's going to rise and do all these things. Okay. But it also says that the Lord, the kingdom of heaven, see, I am delineating in my book series that there's a clash between 2 kingdoms on earth, the reptilian draconian kingdom and the kingdom of heaven. And the kingdom of heaven outnumbers the reptilians 2-1, because the math is in the Bible, where it says 1/3 of heaven's angels rebelled and went with Lucifer, but 2/3 stayed faithful. Okay. So that's like, they're outnumbered. Okay. So they return, and it says that the Lord returns with the horses of heaven. Okay. Well, horses don't fly. Okay. So this is ancient biblical vernacular for spaceships. Okay. Yeah. Ships that have horsepower. Okay. That they return, and he puts everything right. But only this all happens at the end. And it happens when right at the end of the tribalization. So
everything will be decimated. There will probably be not many people left. If this is going to happen, can I take this in a totally different direction, and not one that you might want to go down? You talked about the genetic manipulation, and there seems to be a rising interest in the cryptids, the werewolf strike, Dogman, Sasquatch.
Mm-hmm.
Where does this fit? Or does it fit anywhere in your thinking? And don't go if you don't want to.
No, it's fine. Absolutely. And they are hybrids. Sasquatch is a remnant, a leftover of, some hybridization program that he was the result of, They created miscreants. They mixed and matched different species together. They experimented with it, and God judged them for it and destroyed most of them, not all of them. And that's what we're left with, is these remnants. So the last flood, even though that most of them got destroyed, not all, they went in to the caverns of the earth. They went through these portals. The earth is full of portals. And that's why I think that these ships come and go from inside the earth, from the oceans, from the mountains. They go into these portals and they go into the earth. So not all of them got destroyed. And the giants, these beings, they're 9 feet tall and even taller. I mean, we have archaeology that confirms that this was part of the history. They didn't all get destroyed. So they went in and they regrouped and tried to hybridize and tried to become a better look. This is where spiritual eyes, spiritual ears come in. This is what makes us human, which makes us different. We are spiritual beings. We are souls having human experiences. Okay. Just because, like I said, there's worse things than death. Just because everyone, is like what you just said, that everyone's going to be wiped out. Not necessarily. Yes, physically.
Physically, yeah, but the
but
soul, the
soul
bit that makes you cry, laugh, yeah.
The soul gets regenerated, and those who are of the redeemed from the kingdom of heaven come back and inherit the earth. That's the promise. The promise from the Messiah is to be restored back to the glory body, or the light body, as some people like to call it, to come back to the earth and live in peace, harmony, brotherhood, sisterhood, understanding under this one shepherd. John, the book of John, talks about Jesus having to go someplace and come back with other sheep from another pasture, he says. So he spoke in parables. And these sheep, in my opinion, are extraterrestrial humans that all come together and live under one king and one kingdom. And this is something about Judaism, is that every single prayer in Judaism starts with, "Blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe." Okay, so there is a king and there is a kingdom. And the earth is a battleground between these two kingdoms. Okay, and what is prophesied is that this time, okay, the kingdom of heaven comes and restores the earth, and heaven comes to earth. Okay, so when people die, they think that they go to heaven, like they go up and become a star in the sky. But actually, what the Bible really is saying is that they go to heaven inside the earth. Heaven and hell are inside the earth. Okay. The earth is made of 11 different dimensions, okay? And the Bible talks about 3 levels of hell and 3 levels of heaven. And I unpack all this. I put all the words and unpack it because, and why does the Lord say in 2 Thessalonians when he returns that the dead in Christ rise first? Rise from where? From the earth. He went into the belly of the earth and preached for 3 days to the dead, to Sheol, to the place of the dead. Where were they? In the earth. So we need to learn more about what's under our feet, what is happening inside the earth. The earth is separated by 11 different dimensions. These beings live there. Hell dimension is there. Heaven, which the Bible calls Abraham's bosom, and paradise is in the earth. If the dead in Christ rise first, they're rising from inside the earth. So what he does, he says they rise first. Those who are left on the earth come up with the Lord, and the city of the holy city, the New Jerusalem, comes out of the heaven like a bride, it says. And this is a phantasmagorical mothership, in my opinion. It's described with 12 doors, 12 gates, each one named after the 12 tribes. And the Lord sits in the middle, and it lands over the scorched earth, the scorched old Jerusalem, because it says that Jerusalem is trampled by the Gentiles. It lands, and he basically rules over the whole planet and brings all the nations together. And for 1,000 years, it's a millennium reign. And that's what's happened. That's what's to come in the age to come. So we're at the end of this age, this processional age of Pisces. We're sort of transitioning into the age of Aquarius. And some people think we're already there, but we're not completely done with the age of Pisces. And his promise was that he was going to come back at the end of this age. And when Nibiru passes the Earth, that's the end of the age.
Okay. And honestly, you've given me nothing to do, have you? You've really covered it. To simplify it, as you're talking, I'm thinking you're talking about this huge mothership and what you saw leave the ocean, lift up, and this because they sound above building UFOs, these beings, these supreme beings. And I know I don't expect you to have an answer for this, but where do you think these things are being constructed, these incredible craft? You're going to say inner Earth, or
well, it depends which kingdom you're talking about. The Dragonian kingdom is inside the Earth and also on the Moon. They're underground on the Moon and underground on Mars. Okay, and maybe other planets and moons. There's life on Europa, or the moons of Jupiter. They're here. They've been here. They're in the but the Nemesis Nibiru system has its own set of spaceships. Okay, because we're seeing them around the sun and they're gigantic. That's nothing. That's not our secret space program, and that's not something that, in my opinion, comes from Earth. That is from the call it Anunnaki, Nibiruans. But this was the stuff that the ancients depicted in stone. Sitchin wrote about, and there was a lot of space technology back then. And he evidenced that in his books, that they built these spaceports.
So the UFO subject, the cryptid subject, are we going to see all of this on the increase now? Not just because people are talking about it, not just because people are more accepting of it, because obviously the UFO subject's making mainstream news and people aren't sort of giggling and nudging each other. Is that because we're becoming more accepting and people are looking more, or is it because they're going to make their presence known?
I think both. I would say both. I think you're right on the money there, and also another layer of it is because they're awaiting this return. So some of these beings, okay, are sort of like they don't belong here, they don't belong there, they're miscreants. Okay, I can relate to that because I grew up feeling like I didn't belong. Okay, but there is salvation, and Christians will get really mad at me for saying this because they think only they can be saved and God's salvation doesn't extend to extraterrestrials. I say read your Bible again, okay? Because it does. He very clearly says that he has come to restore all of creation. And my sixth book in my series, which will be out in the new year in January, is about God's salvation written in the stars. The ancient star language all talks about this. So this was broadcast to the universe. This is not just limited to us on Earth.
Okay, right. Well, I'm just going to see if Leslie's got any questions for Ella or myself, because we've probably got 10 minutes left, Ella. Honestly, I love it because I've just had to sit here and do nothing.
Great. Well, time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah.
Truly fascinating, Ella, and thanks for your time this evening.
My pleasure.
I've got a question. It looks like, let's see if we can get this one on the screen. Ella, Lisa Odd, has Ella heard the Anunnaki written as Zahami? Or
No.
No. Oh, well, that's.
I don't speak Arabic. I only know 3 languages: English, Hebrew, and Spanish.
I know 2.
And I'm not really fluent in Spanish. I just know some words here and there, but I don't know Arabic. So maybe another.
The Revenant's back on with a question. Truth proof. Ella, do you know about the last Jubilee and when do you think it will be complete? I don't know what he's referring to there, Ella.
Well, we just went through a jubilee, which happens every 50 years. So it could be 50 years from, because we just completed one. So, but here's the thing when it comes to calendars, and I have a chapter in my book called Calendar Shenanigans. They have messed with the calendars so many times that I say, does anybody really know what time it is? You know, like that Chicago song. And not only have they messed with the calendars, okay, because like, let's say the Jewish calendar, for instance, we're in 5783. It's going to be 5784 soon, but yet it's 2023 in the Gregorian calendar. And there's so many calendars. Okay. So it's like, and then on top of that, they've done time travel. They've manipulated the timeline. We have CERN. We have the Mandela effect. So, and time has changed because the earth has shifted. So each time the earth gets hit with these 9.0 earthquakes, which happened in Chile years ago, it actually took seconds off of our day. Okay, so that's why we have to catch up every 4 years with a leap day, because the math of where we're actually are in terms of real time has been changed, manipulated, and that will happen again, which is why I don't make time predictions. I don't say this date, this month, and that. I'm going to say this is what's left on the prophetic calendar that needs to happen, like World War III, the alien reveal, the counterfeit Messiah, just like the V. Did you get the V series in England?
Yeah. Yes.
So that the truth is stranger than fiction. And this is something to go back to and to review, because this was, you know, I kind of believe that a lot of science fiction writers are somewhat prophetic. Like they get these ideas.
The primed out there. Yeah, the primed.
And then they come true. Okay. So, you know, I'm not putting things down on a calendar and saying this is going to happen at a certain time, because time changes every time this system comes around the earth. And we're already seeing that. The earth, one thing I will say is that we are in a pole shift. The Bible talks about a pole shift. Isaiah says that the Lord is going to turn the earth upside down. That's biblical vernacular for pole shift. It's happened before. And so we believe that the South Pole, which is Antarctica, used to be the old land of Atlantis, because all these beings are coming out of there. There's all these caverns. Remember the X-File movie where the big ship comes out of Antarctica? I mean, and why they kept that area secret for so long, and what happened during World War II. Again, we got to connect dots from World War II to this one, because that's where they hid all the secret space tech in Antarctica, because nobody goes really, you know, and you need special clearances to go there. And, you know, so the earth is going to change again. Okay.
Any more questions, Les?
Yeah, I've got one from, I don't, this video went viral. I don't know if you've seen this one. Yeah, you've probably seen it, Ella.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
Have you any thoughts on that one?
Well, you know, she probably saw one of those shape-shifting reptilians. You know, I mean, I don't know. I wasn't there, but that's what it appears. She was very riled up about it. But she was also, someone had said that she was a military person. So because of the way she wore her hair, so like I have my hair up in like one of the genie ponytails. Well, military women they're not allowed to wear their hair like this. They have to put it all the way back into a little bun at the back, the base of the neck. And it has to be tight. Otherwise they get like penalized for it. And this is military, you know, protocol. So she was a military personnel. You don't hear of her. Have you heard of her? Has she come out? Has she said anything? No, it was just this thing that went viral. And so some people believe that it could have even been like a psyop, like from the military, that they wanted to put that out there to get people to start to think, you know, because disclosure is happening. And the reality of what our military have to endure. This is also part of our disclosure, is that these whistleblowers, the stuff that they've had to, the mockery, the threats, the abuse, that they have had to go through just to be able to tell somebody what they've seen. And they're basically threatened. A lot of them still are. And that's why Congress wants to make these rules and laws. That's the reason why the whistleblowers were able to talk yesterday, is because 2 years ago they passed a whistleblower act so that they can come forward and feel safe. So I think that there's some hidden message from the military who, are frustrated because they have to deal with this stuff and they can't talk about it. And I think that, like, even Neil Armstrong, he died with his secrets, and he was threatened that if he told anyone what happened on his deathbed, they threatened that they were going to go after his family. And he had so much guilt about his family because he had divorced and he wasn't really spending enough time with his kids. And you know his story. So I think that there's a lot of stuff that needs to be unpacked through all these truths, and the military need more help. Okay. And I'm so happy that it's a beginning. You got to start somewhere. And they're going to be passing these rulings to make it easier for people to come forward and talk about this stuff and discuss it. And this is an ongoing discussion.
And do you think, I think I picked up on the hearings that predominantly, obviously, it was military tic tacs and video evidence and everything what was presented. But I think I heard in there was some of the questions were directed at people in commercial aircraft and whether they report things and whether they, because they're under a very strict, self-restricting, non-reporting procedure out there, because they know they probably won't be flying the next flight if they report it.
Yes, that's an excellent question. And from what I remember, when they passed this and they changed the rulings of pilots, it included commercial pilots, because we've had sightings like in the O'Hara, Chicago airport, and how they mocked the pilots for what they reported. And that's changing. So how deep and far they're into it, I don't know, because I don't work in aviation, but I support the fact that they're allowed to talk about it. And now they have a place to go and file a form and keep their jobs and not be threatened. And that's important to me, to know that I get up in an aircraft, and if my Southwest pilot sees something, they can talk about it. Because we're seeing stuff every day. People take pictures out of crafts, out of the airplanes, commercial airplanes, and we're seeing stuff go by. So it's busy. There's a lot going on up there.
When some of these, not all of these, but when some of these revelations do come to fruition, and it turns out that a lot of people have been speaking the truth, there's going to be people in high places who are going to be quite embarrassed by continuing with the lie. I don't know how they're going to feel. I don't know how it will sit for them when some of these truths come out. And obviously we've just got minutes to go here, so we haven't got time to go into it, but I should imagine there'll be egg on a few people's faces.
Well, yeah, I think it's cathartic, and it could be like healing, kind of like a group therapy in a way. And we're all human, and I know that a lot of these people, they're doing the best they can. Okay, they're just getting through the day, and and they put themselves on the line to keep us safe. Space Force, for instance. And I have this in my 5th book, The Real Star Wars, and I think that that's something that people need to take seriously. Is the fact that we have weapons in space. And there's a need for national security, and we have to support them. So if there's stuff that they don't want to divulge, it's for a good reason. And what they are divulging is to help us to be able to prepare for what's to come. Okay, yeah. And I think that they put it into movies. I truly believe they've been working with different
subliminal, and we're getting that information.
Yes. Well, script writers. I think that Star Trek, Star Wars, Marvel, I Dream of Jeannie. They all have the messaging has been is to prepare the public, which I call soft disclosure,
Yeah.
because you can get it from the movies and then you have something to relate to when you actually see it and you go, oh wow. And how many times do we dub things, oh, that looks like the Millennium Falcon, so they call it that. I mean, David Fravor, he had no words for what he saw. He said, oh, it looks like a Tic Tac, so it stuck. And that's how he's, you know, so
the triangle's a burrito, but
it's,
do you know, Ella,
evolution.
I think we're just about winding up here, Ella. It's been absolutely fascinating listening to you, and a different slant to what we normally get, but no less absolutely fabulous.
Fascinating.
Thank you.
I'm going to have to watch the stream back 3-4 times now, Ella, to digest all the information that you've given our viewers tonight. But thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It was wonderful talking.
No, you're welcome.
With you.
So on that note, folks, we will end tonight's stream. We've got to thank Ella again for being on the show tonight. Absolutely amazing guest. And we've got to thank Sky for sending a few questions over. And thanks everybody for being on the stream. On that note, I will say good night.
Yeah, good night. Thank you very much.
God bless.
All right. Bye.